adventures.
Greetings all, Chuke here from Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Well, we've come full circle back to when this channel was pretty new. I did a test with a 460 Rowland Glock 30S build, which was insane. It was one of the most painful pistols I've ever shot. But I was hanging out with L.W. Road years before he even had a channel, and we went out and we did this test of an actual black bear skull that I had encased in ballistic gel. So I'm returning to that idea. However, I don't want to use, I wish I would have saved all those bear skulls that I had because I destroyed them all in tests, and they really weren't that strong, especially after you have it processed. It's very porous and airy and full of bubbles, and it's really not that strong. A bear head isn't even that strong raw. I tested a 9mm on a actual bear head that I didn't even have processed, and it went in right into the brains and made a lot of mess. So what I did is I got an artificial black bear skull. Now this is a prop skull that is actually made of powdered stone dust and resin. So I took a look at it. It is very tough. It is tougher than an actual bear skull. So what I did is I took this resin bear skull that is very hard, and I encased it in clear ballistic gel. This is the 10% FBI gel. So very similar to what I did years ago, except I do have a resin bear skull. So I'm planning on testing a few rounds. We're going to do 10mm, we're going to do 460 Rowland, and then we're going to do 454 Casull. But I'd like to hit it at an angle right about there, where it goes through a couple inches of the gel, and see what damage. And then I'm going to follow it up with a 12-gauge slug, and we're just going to look at each one and see what kind of damage we do. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so our first test is with the 10mm. We got a FN 510 Tactical here, and I've loaded up these, I forgot what they call, CQB. They're these hard cast, black coated hard cast that Chuck really likes. It's actually a better hard cast than a lot of the manufactured ones we buy. So he loaded these up. We're gonna see how they do. Let's try it. All right, 10mm. Let's give it a shot. With the old college try. Woo! Let's see what we got. All right, so with the 10mm, it went in very close to where the skull was, and I'm gonna dig it out later, but it did crush a lot of the bone, so it did a lot of damage and looked like it kind of veered off. So very interesting. I'm gonna try to get in more gel, so maybe hit it from right there. But definitely did some good damage. I'm gonna try to dig all the bullets out later and see if I can actually find that hard cast. But pretty interesting, definitely did some damage. All right, next up, my personal favorite, the 460 Rowland FNX build. We got 255 grain hard cast. Let's see what we can do. Excited about this one. Woo! Did a little more damage. Let's check it out. All right, this one, big surprise. I shot low and to the left. I'll try not to do that with the 454, but as you can see, we had an entrance there and went through, and it did some significant damage to the skull. And we've actually got parts falling off right here. Oh man, there's a big cavity hole there. But hopefully I could dig a bullet out. I don't see where it escaped if it did, but it did do significant damage to the bone, even more than the 10 millimeter, I think. So you got an in right there and impact and shattering bone. So very devastating. All right, going for the big dog here, Ruger Toklat. I got Buffalo Boar 325 grain hard cast. I've done tests with this. Very devastating round. Let's see what we get. I have high hopes it's going to do massive damage. So, see if I can get a decent shot. Woo! Massive damage indeed, baby. All right, we did get a shot into the brain cavity. So there is my entrance. It did enter the skull, and then we have it coming out, just fracturing all over. Massive damage. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully when I take this apart, I will be able to dig a bullet out or bullet fragments. But definitely into the skull, out the back, just fracturing. You see all these movements. We even got a piece of hard cast right there, I believe. Just fracturing. Devastating power, as expected. And finally, we got the best of the best. We got a devastating Remington rifled slug here. Actually, it's Federal rifled slug here. 12 gauge. Let's see what kind of damage we can do. Woo! The most devastating damage by far. Always 12 gauge. Always. I love it. See what we got. Finally, a bullseye. Of course, with the weapon I can shoulder, I'm going to shoot better. But right in the middle of the skull, which I was aiming for, we have fragments. Unfortunately, it hit the ground. I had to try to wash some of the gravel off, but bone fragments here. This stuff feels like porcelain. It is very dense, but it went in right there, completely turned that skull to gel. Look at, you can see the skull itself move when I poke it. The skull is no longer solid. It turned the skull to powder. We go in here and you've just got multiple wound channels. Looks like that's the main one. I think the slug might be intact. I don't see where it went out, but massive damage. I'm going to take this home, pull it apart. Yeah, just massive, massive damage. And we're going to see if we can find any bullets or fragments or intact bullets. Really interesting to find out. But safe to say 12 gauge slug is the most devastating weapon that I own that can protect you from a bear charge, close quarters with a bear. There's just no question you want a 12 gauge slug. The other ones did pretty good too, but let's see what we find in the laboratory. All right, I pulled apart the gelatin, and like I had surmised, a lot of the fake skull was completely turned to powder, and what was left is just like these shattered shards sitting in the gel. Now, there was some nasty kind of burn marks, wound channels. I was hoping to find an intact hard cast, but those hard cast bullets popped out the back and side. But I did, in some of these nasty kind of gray colored wound channels that were kind of burned. I did find fragments of the 12 gauge slug, as I had thought. And so that's about the size of the pieces I found. This one was the biggest one. So that is from the 12 gauge, just cracking into that bone and shattering. I'm sure some pieces sprayed out, but kind of interesting that the hard cast, I believe, stayed intact. I bet you if I had a better 12 gauge slug, it might have, it probably would have gone all the way through, but it might not have shattered as much. But definitely the most explosive damage from the 12 gauge. Let me know what you guys think.
My name is Chuke. I like to trade my guns just for fun, but now I have none. Oh, look, get shot by a bear, but I don't care. I got a 10mm. Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Watch you go.